Support for this program is provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and from viewers like you.
Hello and welcome to Louisiana Public Square. I'm Beth Courtney, president of LPB, and joining me to moderate tonight's discussion about Louisiana's Sportsman's Paradise is an avid outdoorsman and conservationist, Chris Macaluso. And Chris, you know a lot more about this topic than I do. We're so happy to have you.
Well, thank you, Beth. I appreciate the opportunity. It's great to be here to share my passion for our state's fantastic outdoors. Hunting and fishing is really a part of our culture and our livelihood here in Louisiana. And recreational opportunities are plentiful year-round. Right now in the fall, you'll find hunters shooting ducks in the morning and going deer hunting, fishing for redfish, speckled trout, and bass in the afternoons. And it's the time of year when deer hunters switch out their bows for their rifles and take to the woods.
Well, we wonder, is there trouble in paradise? You know, urbanization and a decline in habitat challenge the size and quality of the state's deer population. A fractured coastline and a rebounding ecosystem test coastal's fisheries. And disputes between hunters, fishermen, and private landowners often lead to frustration on all sides. Well, tonight we bring together sportsmen, wildlife experts, and landowners to explore the question, Louisiana, sportsman's paradise or problem? Trent Thibodeau has been hunting for nearly 30 years, starting with duck, then deer, at the age of 9.
It's fun. It's in Louisiana. It's a lot about heritage, being outside with your family and friends, and also it's just enjoying what Mother Nature gave us.
While he hunts deer with a rifle, Thibodeau prefers using a bow, only striking when they're within 30 yards or less.
Deer are so smart, and their ability to smell and see and just sense human beings is phenomenal. So to get them into that tight of an area, that close of a range without them smelling you or seeing you is a challenge in itself.
Seeing a deer has also become a challenge. Thibodeau says their numbers have dwindled where he hunts in East Feliciana Parish.
In the 6 years I've been here, we were seeing doe numbers, on an average morning hunt, you were 6 to 10 does. Whereas last year, the same sit, the same conditions, same time of year, you're lucky to see 1 or 2.
In the meantime, he says, the feral hog population has doubled.
We're seeing 10 to 20 at a time, that number of hogs will run whatever deer you have in an area. They'll generally push them out.
Hunters just need to accept the fact we're going to have fewer deer.
Dave Moreland was Louisiana's state deer biologist for 12 years. He says that urbanization like that on the North Shore following Hurricane Katrina is also driving deer numbers down.
We're even seeing that up in Shreveport, where a lot of the people in Caddo Parish are moving into Bossier Parish, and that parish is becoming urbanized, and again, you're losing deer habitat from that.
In addition, pine management practices by the timber industry since the 90s have diminished deer's food source.
Part of their management program involves intense herbicide treatments to kill the competition with the hardwoods to let the pine timber grow faster. The hardwood component that would be available for food for deer, that what we call browse, is being eliminated because of this.
This, Moreland says, has a domino effect.
With less productive habitat, that means the productivity of the deer declines, so you see less deer. The quality of the animal, you have lower body weights. The antler development is not up to what most hunters are looking for as far as quality. So things like that impacts the deer hunting community.
The annual waterfowl survey released this month by Wildlife and Fisheries indicates the state's duck population is also down, 1.52 million less than November 2016 estimates. Based on the purchase of Louisiana duck stamps, the number of duck hunters has also declined. 103,000 residents purchased stamps in 2000, just under 60,000 residents in 2016.
Anytime you get declining hunter numbers, then you get declining revenues for both management of game and non-game species. So everybody kind of loses with that.
Louisiana Sportsman will be losing access soon to Catahoula Lake, popular for its fishing and duck hunting, if a July ruling stands. A district court decided that the lake in Rapides and LaSalle parishes is actually a river and therefore can't be managed for public use. The state is appealing the decision, and a ruling is expected next summer.
Prominent good fishing areas that have been free and accessible to the public for years in the past are now becoming more and more less accessible.
Kevin Gobert is president of Louisiana Bass Nation, the state chapter of the Bass Anglers Sportsmen's Association, or BASS. The national group announced in August that it won't allow participants in its 2018 tournament on the Sabine River to fish within Louisiana's borders. Bass said that Louisiana's unusual laws governing access to navigable waters have created conflict and confusion among anglers.
A lot of these people are fishing in navigable waterways where the land around them, the banks may be posted that they're not infringing upon, that they're just fishing in the waterways. Well, now they're saying that navigable waterway is private, and as the landowner or the lessee, I have the right to run you off of this property.
Paul Fry is the executive director of the Louisiana Landowners Association. He notes that under Louisiana law, just because a waterway is navigable doesn't mean it's publicly accessible.
It all depends on navigability, when it became navigable, how it became navigable. Is it an arm of the sea? Is it a river? Is it a lake? I mean, all of those things come into play.
Gobert says the ebb and flow of coastal waters creates another area of confusion.
If you're in a bay or in a lake area where what used to be land is now water and there's no signs there, as a recreational fisherman, how are you supposed to know that it's private and that you shouldn't be here?
The key, Fry says, is to think of public rivers and bayous like a thoroughfare.
When you get off of those, though, like a street, you turn into someone's driveway or a parking lot, you've left the public arena and you've gone on to private property.
Last session, Democratic Representative Truck Gisclair passed a House resolution directing Louisiana's Sea Grant to study the matter. Fry says the resolution is unnecessary since Louisiana's legal history has been consistent on the issue.
In all of those court cases where there was a private property issue between a private property owner and the state, the courts have ruled in favor of the property owner. And it dates back to when Louisiana became a state in 1812, what was navigable then versus what's navigable now.
Despite the challenges Louisiana sportsmen face, for Thibodeau, the joy can still be found in the pursuit.
If I come home empty-handed from a hunting trip, it's a little bit of a letdown, but it's about family traditions for us, and harvesting an animal is a bonus, definitely, for me at least.
Joining us to explore Louisiana Sportsman's Paradise is our studio audience. It includes representatives from the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, Louisiana Landowners Association, the Louisiana Sportsmen's Coalition. We also have 2 high school students from the Legislative Youth Advisory Council. Thanks everyone for being here. In August, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service released results from their nationwide 2016 survey. Among the findings, fishing remains one of the most popular outdoor recreational activities, with 35.8 million individuals participating in 2016. 83% of these fished in freshwater, 27% fished in saltwater. In 2016, 5% of Americans, or 11.5 million Americans, went hunting. 85% of hunters were after big game like deer, 33% hunted small game, and 19% hunted migratory birds like ducks and doves. But nationwide, there has been a decline in the number of hunters by 16% over the last 5 years. The numbers of big game hunters fell 20%, small game hunters 22%, migratory bird hunters by 9%, and hunters seeking other animals suffered the largest decline, 39%. The decline in bird hunters comes at a time when national duck populations are actually increasing. Biologists estimate that fewer than 30 million ducks were in North America in 1990. That number ballooned to 50 million ducks by 2015. So let's start there with our audience. do you guys see a decline in hunting and the decline in interest in hunting? And what are some of the other challenges that you see facing the sportsmen and women here in the state of Louisiana?
No, one of the things, Chris, is that the cost of getting a lease, whether it's a deer lease or a duck lease, has prevented me from hunting either of those two for several years now.
Sure. And you know, we have a lot of state managed hunting land here in Louisiana. Is that an option for you and your family and friends, or is it strictly about a private lease?
I know some guys that are fishing in wildlife management areas. I'm a little leery in some of those areas because I like to know who's hunting around me.
Sure.
But that's a personal choice.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. Anyone else?
Some of the challenges that we have in this state for everybody to continue to enjoy hunting has got to come back to the sportsmen themselves and how we conduct ourselves on private property, on thoroughfares and so forth. But the other thing that's really serious is that we've got too much Me Too within the hunting community. We focus on just what our interests in hunting are. I'm with the Louisiana Sportsman's Alliance, and we're trying to protect hunting for everybody. Everybody deserves a right to hunt, and it's a finite resource, and we've got to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to hunt the way that is legal and also traditional. The onus is really on the wildlife and fisheries to help us allocate those resources and times to hunt.
Let's switch a little bit more to the fishing side and really to the habitat side. I know a lot of you guys spend time in the marsh. A lot of you guys are avid duck hunters. What do you see as some of the challenges for Louisiana's coastal fishermen and coastal duck hunters, whether it be from a land access standpoint or from a habitat standpoint?
Being in the coastal region and doing what I do, charter fishing for a living, I mean, our biggest problem that we have on the coast is access to our water. I mean, our access gets thrown off every day. We're getting thrown out of places that been fishing 25, 30 years, and then all of a sudden now they come in and they tell us we can't go there. I mean, who do we know who they really are, to be honest with you? But I mean, we're on the public's water. I mean, we're not on the land, we're on the water, places that we've been traveling for the last 30 years. So that's really our biggest issue, is access to our waterways in the coastal areas.
And Anthony, you fish out of Leeville. You run a charter boat service. What has changed? Why do you feel like that access to places where you fished for so long has been cut off now?
I mean, we have opinions of why it's probably changed. The downturn of the oil economy probably has a lot to do with it. So now what they're doing is they're turning around and they're leasing these lands to fishermen, crabbers, fishermen, shrimpers, oystermen, and those are the guys that's running us off. That's the biggest thing that we've seen change.
Sure. And Rudy Sparks, you're here from the Louisiana Landowners Association. Why do you feel like these conflicts have arisen over the last 5 or 6 years where we didn't have so many before?
Well, I think part of it is that we're seeing a constant change in the terrain and in the habitat. And so that creates some questions in some people's mind as to where does the private land stop and where does the public land start. And I think in many cases over the years, landowners have been willing to allow fishermen greater access to their properties and some of their private canals, but for a number of reasons, particularly the fact that we're really struggling in trying to preserve our coastal marshes. They're so fragile, they're being eroded, subsided, and a lot of damage is caused when some of these boats get into these interior marshes and begin to churn the waters. And so as landowners and land managers who are hired by these landowners, we have a responsibility to protect those resources and those assets that those lands have. And so I think that's part of it. There's a lot of concern about that and the potential deterioration that's caused to these marshes as a result of these fishing activities.
Anthony, you seem to have an opinion on that. What do you think about what Rudy says?
Well, it ain't fishermen that's doing the deterioration of the marsh and all the landowners' properties. It's the commercial companies that's going in there with the barges and doing all of that work. That's the ones that's doing it. It ain't us fishermen. We're just running in canals that's been there forever. We don't damage the marsh and tear it up as we run in through it. It's everything that was done before. I mean, it's being done by natural erosion because of all those canals that were dug.
Sure, and you know, subsidence and land loss is certainly not something that's just isolated to private land. We deal with it on public land as well. But
and I'll add
Mike,
to
would
that
you have an
real quick.
opinion?
You know, Anthony and Daryl are running charter companies and they're running motorboats through there. That's not damaging it. But guys like me that are in the Bayou Coast Kayak Fishing Club have also been excluded from private canals or whatever. And I assure you, me going through there in a kayak is not damaging the property.
Sure. Daryl, you have an opinion, I'm sure?
Well, Chris, I mean, the thing that's affected our coast the most is our coastal erosion and our loss of habitat and the fact that our coast is moving north. It's been well documented, vetted, and proved, and there's two causes to that. One's the leveeing of the Mississippi River, and two is all the canals that were dug from the oil industry that tap the public resource and were used for free. These are all eroding away now. We hear the argument, and I can only speak, I'm going to speak from my area in the Leeville Grand Isle area. When they talk about managing the land and what's tearing it up, there's no management. What management in that area is the fact that when a canal roads away further, they take more oil pipes and stack them in there and block the entrance. Motorboats, if motorboats were tearing it up, then I mean it's their own people they're leasing these lands to are running through it in mud boats, motorboats, like Anthony said, tugboats pushing barges through there that are throwing up mud rooster tails 4 feet in the air. It's not a management issue, it's strictly an access issue.
Sure. Vic, you're here as a representative of landowners. You know, how are you guys trying to manage the land in the face of coastal land loss? And what do you think when you hear from guys who say that, you know, they've been accessing property now that all of a sudden they can't get on, in the last several years?
Sure, Chris. To me, it's fairly simple. I mean, Louisiana law has not changed since Louisiana achieved statehood. It's always been that way. These private properties are still private property. They may have a different characteristic now with coastal erosion and whatnot, but nevertheless, it's still private. Although landowners may have acquiesced the last 10, 20, 30 years in excluding folks from their property, they still maintain that right to do that. I think that's what you're seeing now for whatever reason a landowner may have.
Okay. Well, we've got the two assistant secretaries from the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries representing Fisheries, Mr. Patrick Banks and Mr. Randy Myers on the wildlife side. You guys have to work on public land and private land. You know, how do you guys, work with some of these issues and having to manage the wildlife and fisheries resources, both working with the private landowner and with the public?
Well, our department's been, looking at ways that we can help the resources on private land. We've done some reorganization to put more private land biologists on the landscape, recognizing that the private landowners are very crucial to what we do from a protection and conservation standpoint. But we also are active in providing access through our wildlife management areas and also working with our partners, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Corps of Engineers, local parish entities that may have access to land for hunting and fishing.
Sure. And Patrick, what about on the fisheries side? You know, what kind of issues have you guys seen on the fisheries side from coastal land loss and issues, with land subsiding and eroding?
Well, we certainly have less habitat for fisheries resources, crab, shrimp, finfish. But in terms of the land access issue, we certainly promote as much access as we possibly can. But as Vic mentioned, Louisiana law hasn't changed, and we're not at all about to demand that private landowners give anything up, any kind of legal right that they have, but we do want as much access as possible, which is why we push for that all the time.
Okay. Well, guys, I think it's been an excellent discussion. I don't know that we've resolved anything here, but it's certainly a controversial issue and something that's going to have to continue to be worked out, in conversation and meetings and with the state legislature as we move forward. That's all the time we have for this portion of our show. When we return, we'll be joined by a panel of experts as we explore Louisiana Sportsman's Paradise. Welcome back to Louisiana Public Square. Tonight we're discussing some of the challenges that Louisiana sportsmen and women face. Joining us now is our panel of experts, starting with Secretary Jack Montesay, who was named the Secretary of the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries by Governor John Bel Edwards in December of 2016. Prior to his appointment, he served as a representative for District 42 in Lafayette in the state legislature. Ben Weber is the executive director of the Louisiana Charter Boat Association. He is also a board member of the Louisiana Sportsman's Coalition. The group takes issue with what it sees as landowners claiming possession of water flowing over their property. Paul Fry is the executive director of the Louisiana Landowners Association. The goal of the group is the protection of private property rights. LLA's memberships include hundreds of small and large landowners across the state, including farmers, timber producers, developers, and ranchers. And Dave Moreland holds a master's degree in biology and spent 30 years working with the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. 12 of those were as Louisiana's Deer Program Manager. Moreland has written 6 books and is a regular contributor to Louisiana Sportsman magazine. Before we go to our audience for more questions, I'd like to ask each of you, from your perspective, very briefly, what do you think are the biggest challenges currently facing the sportsmen and women here in the state of Louisiana? And we'll start with Secretary Montesay.
Thank you, Chris. Certainly a pleasure to be here. I've got to tell you, one of the biggest challenges is the number of hunters and fishermen that we have in the state, and those numbers declining in the past recent years. We've got a generation that is getting older and not doing as much fishing and hunting, and that's a big concern for our department. We're certainly looking at those numbers really close and trying to develop some programs that hopefully entice the younger generations to get involved in fishing and hunting.
And that's certainly a concern across the country as hunters decline across the country. Ben, you represent Charter Boat Association here in Louisiana. What are some of the challenges that your members are facing when it comes to getting fishermen out on the water?
I think it's not too dissimilar what you'd find anywhere else in the country. Most of our concern is around the quality of the habitat and access to it.
Sure. Paul, you're an avid hunter and fisherman, and we've known each other for quite a while. What are some of your concerns as we move forward here in the state of Louisiana with hunting and fishing?
Well, the main concern, Chris, is that we don't base any of our decisions in Louisiana on emotion, that we deal with the facts. You know, let's be responsible. I think I heard someone say earlier, be a responsible sportsman, and I think that behooves all of us to do that. Respect private property rights. That's the key. We have thousands of Louisiana sportsmen who enjoy private property on a regular basis. They use leases and permits to access that property, and that's available to a lot of people, and I think we've lost that in this discussion.
Dave, you've been a deer biologist. You work on public lands and private lands. You hunt public lands. You know, what are some of the challenges from a deer hunting perspective that you're seeing with habitat and things facing hunters here in Louisiana?
Well, there's been changes in the forestry management in the piney woods, in some of our swamp habitat and coastal habitat. The hurricanes have created problems but the deer have responded, and hunter recruitment, I think, is a big issue. And we were hunting Pearl River the other day, and it was like this was our own private lease. Very few hunters were there, and you know, we have a rich heritage in this state of public lands, and people need to take advantage of them because they are our lands and open for hunting and fishing.
Sure, some of the best waterfowling opportunities in the state are on public lands. You know, some of the areas downriver, some of the areas in the Wax Lake area and the Atchafalaya Delta. One of the things when you start peeling back the layers of how fish and game are managed in this country, you know, on the fishing side, some federal law allows some money to be used for recruitment, but on the hunting side, that's been a little bit slower in developing. Do you think that utilizing some of the taxes generated off of sale of hunting and fishing equipment, or hunting equipment specifically, to do more recruitment would help bring more hunters back into the fold?
I think that has been done. I'm not sure what the big issue is in recruiting the younger generation. It just seems to me that there's much more opportunity available for them, and they can go hunting or fishing if they want to, or they can do all these other things. I'm not sure more money is necessarily the answer to that.
Well, we've got some younger folks here in the audience. Aaron, you're here. Tell us, do you like to hunt and fish, and what do you think some of the challenges in getting folks your age to be more involved in outdoor activities?
Well, I don't really hunt, but I do fish some, and I live in a community, Wakefield, that has a population less than 600. And so, it's really familiar to me. A lot of my friends hunt, and a lot of them fish, and a lot of them hunt for deer and for ducks and other things like that. And so I think the big issue is that there's more urbanization, and there's a broader amount of ideas that attract these younger people other than hunting. And so they're kind of moving away from hunting towards more modern recreational things like technology. And so you just don't see that many younger people getting interested in hunting because it's much more correlated with older generations.
Well, Canlin, you're a young fella as well. What if we tried to incorporate some of this technology into hunting? What if we Snapchatted some hunts? Would that make a difference?
Well, I don't really know. I don't use Snapchat a whole lot, so social media, I don't know. But the biggest issue I see for younger hunters is a lack of an older generation that has introduced them to hunting. You know, if there's not somebody say like a dad or grandfather that shows them how to hunt, it's harder for them to get interested in hunting.
You had a question for our panel about the discussion about private property owners and how to post their private property. What is your question to our panel? What can they help you with?
What can landowners do to ensure that they have provided adequate posting about their private property to fishermen, to ensure that fishermen don't accidentally stray into their private property?
Well, most of the fishermen have access to GPS, and there's maps online. I know the charter fishermen definitely know how to use them. Most recreational fishermen do as well. So that's one way. State law does not require you to post, but many of the coastal landowners do post the property. The problem is there's an expense there, and when somebody either shoots the sign or tears it down, then there you go with damage to property, which is an issue why controlling access is so important to a private landowner.
If I could chime in a little there, I think one of the problems is there is no place to go find one map that everyone in the state agrees upon is an accurate representation of what is private and what is public. You know, we're talking about a landscape that changes every minute, and we're basing a lot of these defining boundaries between what's public and private on a map from the 1800s, which couldn't be further from an accurate representation of what our coast looks like now. So I think that's a little bit of the problem as well.
But that map is an accurate representation of what the property owners own. I mean, that's when title passed or was severed from the public domain and went into private landowners. So those maps are reliable, and the mere fact that water covers a landmass doesn't by itself make the landmass publicly accessible. It's still private property if it was severed from the public domain in after 1812 and found its way into the private domain. And those maps are reliable even today.
I welcome you to get on my boat and come show me on a map from the 1800s where I am in Leeville when the landowner runs me out. If you know that, you can come fishing with me anytime. Those maps are not useful.
Well, back to our questions. Quad White, you're here from the Southern University Law Center, and I think you've got a very important question to ask the landowners about liability. You know, what if some of the liability of potential harm was alleviated? Would some of these problems be resolved?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. I know that the word sportsman is a 9-letter word and the word paradise is an 8-letter word. But when you're looking at the word paradise and you zoom in on that word, it's kind of a one-sided word because it's beneficial for only the hunter and not the hunted. So my question was simply, where does the liability come in?
Well, liability is extremely important. That's the key point to controlling access, knowing who's on your property and when they're on your property. So that's I hate to say it, but Louisiana's been noted as being a fairly friendly, sue-happy state, so to speak. You're a law student. I hope you can turn that around.
Mr. Secretary, you served in the state legislature for a number of years. Did these issues come up when you were in the legislature of, access and water rights and things like that? And how did you deal with it there?
About 9 years in a row, Chris. Okay. It's always been a really, it's a difficult issue because you want to respect people's property. Certainly as a legislator, we tossed that around, went round and round with it and could never come to any reasonable solution. And so, the discussion is still taking place. I think Sea Grant is has initiated some forum as of late where we organized a group to sit down with landowners, sit down with the fishermen, sit down with all the parties involved, and see if at least conversation can't come to some sort of not compromise, but an agreement. If we can begin that process of them agreeing on certain things, then I think they'll be able to move forward with that. You know, it's a dual role that it's a very sensitive issue, but I think I think that the possibility exists for at least communication to begin, and concerns that both sides can recognize, identify those concerns that each other have, and hopefully come to some kind of at least agreement would be a good start.
I think that'd be a good starting point. Ryan Levine, you have fished in the largest bass fishing tournament in the world. Represented Louisiana proudly in the Bassmaster Classic this year. You had a question about the economics of fishing. You know, it's not just about biology. This is the way people make their living. And so, what was your question?
Currently, our high school numbers are growing tremendously when it comes to bass fishing. College is taking that, is following too. We've had a BASS event. It was a college series event 2 years ago in Morgan City. One of the largest events we've had in South Louisiana in years. Bassmaster Classic in the past has come to New Orleans numerous times. All these events bring a lot of money to the local communities, and a lot of people depend on that money. I'm just wondering, you know, if an agreement would help alleviate some of these issues that the organizations are having. You know, currently we have next year an Elite Series event that will not allow guys to fish the Louisiana side of the Sabine River. They can only fish Texas because Texas laws are different. You know, there's a lot of accessible Louisiana waters there for them that are great fishing, but they will not allow them to come into our state. And I just wonder, this is kind of for everybody. I mean, is this a, you know, how do we fix that? You know?
Well, I actually interviewed with Bass. You probably know that, and I made some comments, and I'll just repeat those same comments. Bass did only selected the Sabine River tournament. They didn't close anything else. They did mention the mouth of the river. I know y'all fished out of Venice. The Venice area, you've got Passalutra and you've got Delta. The two of those together encompass over 200,000 acres. So I would imagine there's a few places to fish. Louisiana ranks 5th nationally in the total number of acres in water. 5th. Only Alaska, Florida, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And you can throw Wisconsin and Michigan out because they take in the Great Lakes. So we've got a lot of public water out there. And, you know, I think folks are jumping on bandwagons, and they really need to look at the facts, look at the numbers. I even looked at some numbers relative to out-of-state fishing sales. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service publishes that. The states have to report that information.
I'd love to speak to the economic side of this,
because I didn't get to the numbers yet.
Sure, go ahead.
2016 to 2017, number of out-of-state non-resident fishing licenses went up 11,000. You go back to the year 2000, 150,000 more licenses were sold this year than the year 2000. So it puzzles me that we're running fishermen away. You know, I've heard that said, and I'd like to correct that, because that's really it's not an accurate statement when you look at the facts.
I would like.
Oh, go ahead.
If I made that assumption, that's not what I meant. I did not say we're running anyone away. I'm speaking on the tournament side of it, on that behalf, because bass will not come to South Louisiana. They'll go to Toledo, they'll go north, but they will not come to South Louisiana until something's resolved. And it could be as simple as remove the gray area, because as I know Sean knows, he and I fish against each other a lot. I mean, it's as simple as maybe a marsh pond that's got 4 drains you can enter it through. 3 of them may have a sign, 1 doesn't. Well, if I've got a guy fishing against me from Tennessee that doesn't know our laws, or thinks he knows our laws and goes in an entrance that isn't posted, which I know we don't have to do that, I'm essentially getting beat by someone who doesn't realize they're doing anything wrong on private land. That's the gray area that's given the issues. I apologize if I meant that we're running people out, because that is not where I'm getting.
We are. We absolutely are running people away, and I can speak to that from the charter side. And I'd love to. And the term bandwagon was used, and I don't think there's a bandwagon anybody's getting on. I think when your livelihood depends on being able to provide a service to people without being harassed on what most of the country would identify as a public resource, that's a problem for Louisiana. I got phone calls from as far away as Montana, California, and New York from colleagues of mine who said, we just saw this bass press release, what's going on down there? I can show you numerous communications we received from people saying, I will not come back to fish in Louisiana. I was harassed there. I would lose my security clearance for my job at work if I had a trespassing ticket for simply fishing. So we talk about getting young anglers and hunters into the sport and helping sort of follow in our passion and follow those things. We're talking about the license sales that are important to help manage game and non-game resources. We're talking about the state of Louisiana being in an awful financial position right now. We're also talking about a state that has the worst land loss crisis that we've ever seen and a $50 billion price tag attached to the plan to fix it. So not only are we physically losing habitat, not only are we seeing less and less people become involved in hunting and fishing, we're also seeing the effect that has on licensed sales, the level of interest that young anglers and hunters have in our sports. And we're asking everybody, hey, we want to restore this landscape, which we all do. And none of us in our right minds would want to say anything that would give the impression that we want to stand in the way or impede coastal restoration in Louisiana. It's too important for all of us. But you're telling most of the general public, not just in Louisiana, but also the country, if you come here, it's likely that you will be harassed at the very least, ticketed, and in some instances be subject to a violent altercation, which has happened. There's been more than one instances of these altercations creating violence. So how much longer can we afford to let the black eye grow in Louisiana? It's not a bandwagon. These guys' livelihoods from the charter industry depend on being able to provide a service to their customer. The young guy that wants to go hunt depends on being able to go out and hunt and fish. The resource managers depend on license sales so they can do their job. And at the same time, private property owners need to have their rights respected. We feel like access to the water should be for the public, but it should not bring additional liability for landowners, and we should do everything we can to try to cement all the protections that are necessary for landowners while allowing access to the resource and all the economic activity that comes with it.
Let's talk deer hunting real quick. We've spent a lot of time on fishing, and we want to address a lot of the issues that are in the room, and we've talked about private land. One of the programs that's benefited private landowners is the DMAP program, and Henry, you had a question about that.
Yes, Chris, I was wondering if we've looked at the DMAP program and thought of any other ways that we could manage deer. I've done some reading and see that other states do things a lot different. It seems like the number of large bucks that we kill in Louisiana is on the decline. And the DMAP program has been in place for a while.
And Dave, you could speak to DMAP a little bit. That's what you did. One of the things you did when you worked for the department. Explain a little bit about DMAP and where the direction of that program's headed.
Yeah, I was working when DMAP was invented in 1980. It was designed to help landowners manage their deer herds, to give them opportunity to harvest the number of deer that needed to come off the property, and also to provide habitat management direction to improve the habitat conditions. It has worked real well. Today there's more mature adult bucks, 3.5 and older, being killed than year-and-a-half olds. When we started DMAP, probably 80% of the antlered buck kill was year-and-a-half old deer, and that has changed. So DMAP has helped, but I think there's a lot of issues involved with the quality of the landscape and the nutrition that we had. The 85 Farm Bill, basically farming stopped in east and west of Feliciana, and everybody planted pine trees. And now everybody, when they plant the pine trees, they herbicide it, and it kills the hardwood component that is the deer use for browse. So the overall nutritional need that the deer have to grow and develop is not there like it should be. And I made the statement before that people need to realize that you know, they're going to have to either learn to adapt to fewer deer and deer that aren't the quality that they want, or they're going to have to you know, supplemental feeding, which is very costly, or you're going to have to do some intense farming, food plot plantings, which most clubs aren't designed to do. So, but the department has private biologists that can help a landowner achieve and try to achieve the goals that he wants, you know, on his property.
Mr. Secretary, can you speak to that? You know, the biologists and their availability to help?
We have plenty of biologists, Chris, but I'm going to defer to my head of wildlife, who certainly has all of the answers for all of this, and he's the expert. I'm not. So
we have 7 regional offices across the state that have biologists in each one of those regions that are available to work with the DMAP cooperators. DMAP has various levels of participation, and depending on what the goals of the landowner is. Dave is right, you know, the Piney Woods, we are seeing some decline, but however, you know, the Mississippi Alluvial Valley is a very fertile, rich area. People manage their property properly, and we are actually seeing an increase with the DMAP program in body weights, lactation, as well as antler size and development. So it may be more of a localized issue where you're seeing or familiar with some groups that have DMAP land that may not be under the right management because of restrictions of the habitat that you know, they're dealing with. But you know, statewide, our DMAP program is showing that it is working.
Warren, we haven't heard from you, and you have a question for our panel?
Yes, because what I want to ask is pertaining to the deer hunting, and why I see to be a problem with some of the DMAP situations with the smaller landowners in the vicinity of the managed areas. For the most part, it creates a safe haven for the deer that come off of the small landowners, and you have to have a certain amount of acres to enroll in this program. And I think it should be that if I'm too small, maybe my property with the next guy's property would be a situation that we could still get into this program, because like you said, it's benefiting larger deer and more deer. But also another question, I have a comment that in my area, which is east of 61 in Westfield Shannon, and what is seen to be in that area, we don't have a winter anymore. Like not so much last year, but year before last, I noticed the hookings and scrapes early, then they totally went away, and they come back right at the end of deer season. Why not a later season than waste your time fighting mosquitoes all done in the beginning of the year?
Well, and that's a good question. You know, something that comes up with the duck hunters as well, Dave, is that you know, what if we move the season a little bit later? You know, the cold weather seems to be later in coming. Is that something that biologists could consider?
Well, that has been looked at, and seasons have been set to adjust for the later rut, which West Feliciana does have basically a late December, January, and then you do get some breeding going on into February. Of course, we cannot control the weather, and cold weather certainly makes the deer active, and you see the breeding things that they do, the hooking and the scraping more with the cold weather. But they're going to breed regardless. Most of it's probably at night when they're more comfortable about it. Small landowners can combine their property to get enough acreage to enroll in DMAP. That's always been a reality of the program, that you can do that. So you might check into that with your adjacent landowners and see if you can join, and even perhaps join the DMAP property itself. You know, maybe they would allow you to be part of their program.
What are your lower limits?
I'm not sure what the limits are now.
500 total acres, but half of it has to be forested. So. But there's different levels, and depending on you know, what your level of participation is, we certainly allow that opportunity to work in a cooperation with an adjacent landowner.
Well, guys, let's go back down to the coast a little bit. Sean, you had a question about coastal land loss and how the state's moving forward with repairing that.
Yeah, so Ben alluded to it a little bit, and Secretary was mentioning lower license sales declining, but my question kind of involves funding. So CPRA is in control of billions of dollars that's going to be put toward coastal restoration. And as Ben said, nobody wants to advocate for not doing it because Louisiana absolutely needs that. But my question revolves around the fact that that is basically public money. It was given to the state to rebuild the coast following the oil spill, for the most part. It's my understanding that these private-owned lands will basically be rebuilt by the state using that money. And then once the coastal restoration is done, it'll be turned back over to the private landowner. My contention is that I believe the public should get something in return, and maybe water access only, not land access or anything like that, but water access might be a good place to meet in the middle. Just wanted to see if there were any comments on that.
Well, I think this is a good one for the Secretary and for Mr. Fry to handle. Mr. Secretary, you were in the legislature when the state's coastal master plan passed. We've had 3 iterations now, and the fact is 80% of coastal Louisiana is privately held. So if we want to do restoration in the state, it's going to have to be in private land.
And it's private land where the land was lost also. So it's kind of a two-edged sword there. I think that's an awesome idea. I'd never heard that before, but I think that's one of those things that when you start talking and we start discussing, some things come out that can be explored. I think that's one area that could be explored, certainly. In exchange for creating land, we certainly could have that conversation with landowners. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is benefit the state as a whole, and not only build that land to give back to that private landowner, but we're trying to protect other land that is further inland and the people and all the resources that belong with that. So it's kind of you say it's taxpayers' dollars, yes, going back to restore land for private landowners, but when you look at the big picture, you're doing much more than that. Although I've got to say that's interesting what you brought up, and it's certainly an area that should be explored some more.
Paul, coastal restoration, is a huge issue, obviously. I mean, it threatens the future of our, coastal communities, the coastal land loss that we're experiencing. Really, private landowners have to participate in this for coastal restoration to be successful, because the state needs access to those critical areas, and it has to come from private landowners.
That's right. And a number of our private landowners that are members of Louisiana Landowners Association have done a number of projects on their own, out of their own pocket, without any participation or partnership with the state. And we can cite several examples. I realize we don't have time for that, but we'll be able to present that information and at the appropriate time. But I think you do have you have something that's worth discussing, Sean. I can't refute that fact, but I can also say that remember that landowners are taxpayers as well.
I understand.
Well, Don, you had a question about feral hogs. That's a huge problem that I think a lot of people don't realize along our coast. I mean, not only are they destroying wetlands, but they're destroying levees.
Yes.
What's your question about feral hogs?
Well, my question is, when are we going to get to a solution to that problem? You can't do anything. You can't get ahead of them trapping or hunting or shooting them out of the sky, helicopters or whatever. You've got to take 70% of them a year just to stay even. Well, there's no way that you can do that. They're bad on local flora, on fauna. They eat baby deer. They'll eat the snakes. And the Forest Service, I hate to say this, is operating a refuge for the feral hogs because they don't want hunters in there. They're scared that somebody may walk across there and step on a plant, but it's okay for the hogs to root up there every night. And worst of all, they carry about 25 different diseases, and some of them are directly communicable to humans. I want to know, what are we going to do about the feral hogs?
Well, Dave, you try to take care of them one at a time with a 30-30. What do you think the long-term solution here is dealing with this? This is an epidemic that's not just in Louisiana, but across the country.
Yeah, it's a problem that involves intense work, effort, trapping, hunting, and still that's not enough. And research, the universities are working on trying to develop a solution that would address depopulation of large numbers of them on a large scale, and that's probably forthcoming. You know, something like that is going to have to happen to reduce the number that we're dealing with.
But remember, you've got to get to 70% just to stay
Exactly.
even with the herd.
Exactly.
We need something that's biological, I think.
Well, and that's the approach they're taking, trying to develop something that will kill them or kill their productivity. The big issue is the non-target animals, particularly the black bear, things like that. You know, you have to make sure whatever is done does not damage those populations.
Yep.
Mr. Secretary?
We're working with the Department of Agriculture very closely. They're looking at biological projects that they're looking at for sterilization. They're looking at all kinds of and they're doing research right now for different kinds of feedstock where they could feed these animals to get rid of them. The biggest problem we've had is warfarin was the first initial product that came out to get rid of the hogs, but the collateral damage that would have occurred is far worse than where the hogs are at today. I think, you know, with the research going on right now, I believe within the next year or two we're going to have some biological answer to the problem that we have with feral hogs. Certainly they're a horrible problem, and a lot of the problem we're having with deer population and the habitat for deer is responsible. The responsibility comes from the feral hog destruction of that habitat. So we are working with agencies. We're working with LSU. We're working with the Department of Agriculture. There are some national companies that are working and looking at some alternative resources that we may be able to apply to get rid of these hogs. So there is a lot of work taking place. You know, I wish I could snap my fingers and they could go away. But it's not like we're not doing anything, and we do realize the importance of that issue and what effects it has on the rest of the landscape within Louisiana. So,
well, guys, we're running out of time for this segment, but this certainly has been an engaging conversation. I mean, we could break any of these topics out and spend hours talking about them, but just some closing comments from the panel before we wrap up.
You know, first of all, I'm really excited about being here. I think it's important for us to sit down as citizens of Louisiana and discuss what our differences are and see if we can't find some common ground. I got to tell you, Wildlife and Fisheries is responsible for keeping this state the sportsman's paradise. I've been all over the country, and I got to tell you, we still have the sportsman's paradise. We've got a lot of work to do. We spend a lot of money. We manage 1.5 million acres of land. We work with private landowners. We do all of those things, and then we come back and enforce all of the regulations that we impose on how many, what's the limit on ducks, geese, deer, and everything else. We have all of the biologists in-house that works all over the state with private landowners and with our public land that we have available. And it's certainly going to be a challenge for us in the next few years to see where we go and where we head with all of this. But I believe it's in communications like this, in interactions like this, that we can find some common goal where we can get to some good places and make this a better sportsman's paradise for all of our constituents in Louisiana and for the people that visit here. So thank you all for being here. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you, Ben. Some brief final thoughts?
Sure. I'll speak directly to the public water, posted water access issue. There's three really good things that we have going for us in the state of Louisiana. We've talked a lot about the problems so far. One is that we have one of the best wildlife departments in the whole country, although it doesn't keep us from having very high expectations, as you are all aware. And that sometimes leads us to be a bit vocal about those expectations. The other good thing is Louisiana is becoming a global leader in coastal wetland restoration, coastal habitat, water resources issues. So we have basically the dream think tank in Louisiana to combat almost any water resource issue we have. So we have a tremendous amount of expertise in our wildlife department and in our coastal protection and restoration department. The last thing I want to say, is, which is really good news, is that almost every serious major conservation victory has been born out of partnerships between resource managers, private property owners, and the folks that use these resources. And with the expertise we have here and with the history in America of working through very difficult resource issues, I'm hopeful for the posted waterway issue that we will get to some meaningful resolution that protects the property owner's rights and also allows the public to better access the resource.
Paul, your thoughts?
Well, many of you know I worked for a state agency in Louisiana for 33 and a half years, so I was on the public side. I've always been a private landowner, so I'm also on the private side. So I try to ride the fence on the side of public versus private. It's a slippery slope, obviously, as you've heard from all the discussions today, and I think we can agree to disagree at times, but we can also get together and talk about some possibilities. We heard about a few tonight, and I would ask that all those that are trying to point fingers at landowners would understand the issues that landowners have to face. And private property rights are paramount in our Constitution, both our state and our federal Constitution.
Dave?
Well, I think regarding declining hunter numbers, I think we're just simply seeing the evolution of our hunting heritage and changes in society and culture. And I think the key is that we as hunters show the non-hunters that we are responsible, that we are concerned for the resource. We're just not takers and users, that we are trying to do our job to manage the resource, that everyone will benefit from it.
Well, thank you, guys. It's been a very encouraging and engaging conversation. And one thing I'd like to do is encourage folks who are listening and watching, get involved in the legislative process. Talk to your representatives, go to a Wildlife Fisheries Commission meeting, get involved in the process of the things that you care about in this state. Well, that wraps up this segment. We'd like to thank our panelists, Secretary Monasay, Mr. Weber, Mr. Fry, and Mr. Moreland for their insight on this month's topic. When we come back, we'll have a few closing comments. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Louisiana Public Square. We encourage you to visit our website at lpb.org/public square. While you're there, you can view extended interviews and comments on tonight's show, and we'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment. Well, it's been nearly 12 months since you made your New Year's resolutions, and I obviously didn't follow mine, so if shedding extra pounds was on your list, it's not too late to join Louisiana Public Square next month for an encore broadcast of Healthy New Year and learn the best way to lose weight and keep it off. Thanks for watching, and good night.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org.